Dumelang Sambanani, hello South Africa. A very warm welcome to Expressions. This is definitely the place for you to air your views. I'm your host, Jacqueline Mapala.
And I'm your host, Mqolisi Wagamasango. Now, as Nelson Mandela Month draws to a close, TC Expressions, we felt it would be fitting to pay a tribute to our struggles stalwart, Gayene, father of the nation, Jackie. We're also paying homage to the youth who are making very big differences.
Indeed, Mko. So we decided to put a very special spotlight on three very phenomenal young people who are change makers and are making a difference in their own right. We asked them very simple questions. What does legacy, leadership, as well as service mean to them? But most importantly, what lessons have they drawn from Mutata or Nelson Mandela? Our first phenomenal young person is Ulukanyo Ngana. Take a look at this. You are watching Expressions and we are commemorating Mandela Month on the show. We're putting a very special spotlight on young people who are redefining and reshaping the spaces that they're in. As you can see, we are in location in Bruma and we're going to be speaking to a phenomenal young person by the name of Ulukanyo Ngana. Now, we are asking him very important questions around what does leadership, legacy and service means to him. Let's go inside and meet him.
So Ulukanyo was born and bred in Uitenhage, also known as Tinaga. It's a small but not too small town outside of Port Elizabeth. I'm the youngest of three children, born to a single mother who is currently a domestic worker. Surprisingly, she's 60 years old and still refuses to stop working. So my father was never around. However, I did get to know him in my late teens, and I'm very glad for that moment. Sadly, he passed away in 2014.
What was about the work that you chose to sort of dedicate your life to? I mean, they always say that you need to give your talent, your treasure, and your time. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I've been in the political space for about 10 years. I was working for the Democratic Alliance, and the last position I held as a professional staff member was the Director for Strategic Campaigns. And you know, people are aware of what has happened in the party in the past year. You know, losing some very prominent leaders in the party, and also the party went through some retrenchments as well. Currently, the party is undergoing a restructuring process that was actually proposed during the review stage that the party undertook after the 2019 elections. However, I felt politics are not sufficient to bring change. And like I said, politics are part of our daily lives. However, they are not there to bring the change that we want to see. And only society, only citizens in society can actually bring the change that we need. So at the moment, I've dedicated myself to actually starting a movement which is called the Advanced Society. Now, the Advanced Society is a movement that is dedicated to actually bringing together citizens, having a conversation around what is it that we want to see change in our society. One thing I've realized is that politics doesn't empower people. It actually takes away that power, and we need to bring that power back. And this is what Mandela actually stood for, is that people shall govern. And at the moment in time, people are not governing. However, their power has been taken over by politics, and that is not right in this country.
Ulukanyo, what does it mean to have a legacy and to build it? And most importantly, how do you reflect it in your everyday life?
I have 2 sons. I have 3 nieces. And I want to build a future that will recognize them for who they are. A future that will celebrate any achievements that they achieve in the future. And if I leave this earth, if I leave this world, I want to leave this world having helped build a society that actually accepts me for who I am, that accepts my children and my nieces and all the other kids are like them as they are, and actually celebrate who they are in life.
Ulukanyo, what does leadership mean to you?
For me, leadership is about compassion. If you're not compassionate, then you cannot be a leader, or you don't deserve to be called a leader. You need to understand the experiences of those that you claim to lead. If ever you don't understand where they come from, if you don't understand who they are, then you cannot lead them. Leadership is saying, I am giving myself over to whoever it is that I'm going to be representing. If ever I go to parliament, having been voted in by voters, then I'm going to parliament to give myself over to their needs and not to my own needs. And at the moment, it is not happening. So that is what I want to see being achieved in this country. To say whoever is a leader will give themselves over to whoever they claim to be leading.
Martin Luther King says that greatness is determined by service. How do you exemplify, display, and reflect service in your own life?
I serve by firstly appreciating what is around me. I serve by appreciating other people's experiences, because we are not united as a country, and partly because of the past that we have as a country. We're into 26 years of democracy in South Africa. However, we are still not a united country. We need to realize that for us to actually come together as a country, we need to appreciate who we are. We need to appreciate each other in our experiences.
Lucanyo, as we celebrate Mandela Month and what he stood for and what he reflected as a man and as a person, I want to find out from you, what are the lessons that you have learned from Umadiba?
Mandela has inspired me in so many ways. But there's two things that I've always appreciated about him. The first one, he was a challenger. He never gave in to injustice. He has always challenged the status quo. And one of the things that I couldn't stand, having been in an environment where there were supposed to be leaders, is people giving into the status quo to such an extent that they would sacrifice their own selves to give into the status quo. And perhaps these days people want benefits more than service, but Mandela was always about giving himself over to the service. He never, ever gave in to the status quo. He sacrificed his entire life to ensure that the status quo doesn't remain. That's the first one. The second one is he was very compassionate. In everything that he did it for the people, not for himself. And for me, that's what sticks out when I think about this man.
Well, a selfless and compassionate leader indeed. Sibonge kakhulu uLukhanyo Ncane and the difference that he's making we advanced society. See Expressions is qhubekela phambili with this all important discussion. Masibuya, stay with us.
Welcome back to Expressions. As Mandela Month draws to a close, we thought it would be fitting for us to celebrate the spirit of Utata Nelson Mandela, and we're doing it by putting a spotlight on three very phenomenal young people who are making a difference in the spaces that they're in. Now, our next lady is a powerhouse of note. Her name is Litzwalo. Take a look at this. We are watching Expressions, and we are on location, Go Riverside, and we continue to put a very special spotlight on phenomenal young people who are redefining and reshaping the spaces that they're in as we continue to commemorate Mandela Month. Now, my next guest is the epitome of black girl magic. Who am I speaking about? I'm speaking about Litzwalo, who is the founder of Masodi Cosmetics, and she's going to be sharing with us her story, but most importantly, how she is revolutionizing beauty as we know it. Let's go and meet her. Liz, a very, very warm welcome to Expressions. It's so good to just sort of have you sitting here with me and just having a chat. Liz, you are my epitome of black girl magic. But I think before we get to that, maybe tell us a little bit about who Liz is.
I'm a young girl from a small village called Lepepane, it's in Zanin, in Limpopo. From a fairly large family, very tight with my sisters, you know, and I've always been an aspirational young person, you know, so went to primary school, then high school, and along all of those levels, I've always been a brilliant young person. And as I was growing up, I started understanding what actually brilliance and excellence means in the context of who I am and in the context of my self-worth, right? So I think these days I try to steer away from talking about who Liz is in relation to the things that Liz does. I will talk about who I am in relation to my family, in relation to where I live, in relation to the things that matter to me. And those are things like politics and things like justice and things like, living a meaningful and a healthy life. That is who Liz is. She's a young person who just wants to self-actualize in the world and connect with other people. One of the things not that many people know is that the business is named after my mother. My mother's name is Masudi. She was then named after her aunt, whom I believe was her father's sister. So this is a business that is named after a very important woman in my life, but this is also a business that is about, revolutionizing beauty, recognizing the historical, injustices that have been imposed on Black women when it just comes to beauty in particular, how the standards have always been so westernized and how, the measure for beauty has always been so aspirational and so unrealistic. You look at me today and you see a young Black woman with short hair selling hair care products, and I get this question a lot. How are you going to sell hair products when you have short hair? Because short hair is hair and it's beautiful and it's not a journey somewhere. I'm not cutting my hair because I'm starting something afresh. When I was cutting my hair, people said, "What are you going through? Is this a new beginnings?" I said, "No, it's a hairstyle. I love it. I think it makes me look beautiful. I enjoy it. When I grow my hair again, it will be out of choice again." So this is essentially a business that wants to, give people options. You don't have to force people to comb their hair. You don't have to force all of these products onto people. Give people an array of options to choose from. Beautiful, healthy, high quality options.
Liz, what does legacy mean to you? But I think most importantly, how do you reflect it in your everyday life?
I think about legacy in the way that Oprah Winfrey thinks about legacy, which she sort of like learned from Maya Angelou. She says, Maya told her that your legacy is every life that you've touched. And when I thought about that and I reflected on that, for me, my legacy is every single thing, good or bad, that I have ever done and that I will ever do. And I think oftentimes we want to talk about our legacies as this grand things, right? It's this big moment, but it's only a big, good moment. Each time I make someone not feel good about themselves, that is my legacy. Each time I litter, for argument's sake, that is my legacy. Each time I make someone smile, each time I, create a good product and I send it on time and I give someone a seamless service to accompany the products, that is my legacy. So I think about legacy in everyday terms. Every single thing I do feeds into that.
Liz, what does leadership mean to you? And especially as we're commemorating a great leader like Nelson Mandela, how do you display leadership in your everyday life?
I think leadership means probably two things at this point. It means honesty and it means agency, because the merging of these two things for me is very important for people to do the things that we consider people to be leaders for. If you're first and foremost able to say, here is an issue and I can look at it objectively and I can be absolutely honest, or as honest as I possibly can about it, that is the first thing. And then when you can then go on and say, I am able to then, through my agency, move something for or against this particular thing. That for me, I think is going to create a lot of impact, and that is the kind of thing that we recognize people to be leaders for. If you can see something and move it, even in the slightest way, I think you're a leader. If you see someone and move them, even in the slightest way, I think that's a leader. And I think that's how I would, at least at this point, describe leadership. I've drawn lessons from Madiba and lessons about Madiba. The one lesson I've drawn from the man is his humility. Regardless of what is being said about him, regardless of what, the politics of his legacy and all of that stuff, the man oozed such humility that you cannot not be influenced by it when you watch him speak, when you read about him. I think I particularly like that and I enjoy that about him. What I have learned about the man, not from the man, was that, there's room to be more honest about people's legacies. There's a yearning or there's a hunger for me to see more about the man Mandela, the father, Mandela, the neighbor, when he was released from prison. And I know a couple of people have spoken about him, but it would be refreshing for the world to get to know about him more holistically. You know, perhaps to hear more about from his children, more from the people that experienced him day to day.
Ake uLiz is certainly an inspiration. Sibonge kakhulu sikuthulela isigqoko seswami. Well, we continue the expressions when we return. You still with the Expressions, your #1 youth current affairs show. Now, as we head towards wrapping up on Nelson Mandela Month, we are speaking to phenomenal young people to find out ukuthi ngabe bona benza njani to keep the spirit of Utata Madiba going. We are now joined by Otami Boe, who is a young, phenomenal person there, Wase Chimong Growing Citizens. Thank you very much for your time, Tammy, on Expressions. Please speak to us about Chimong Growing Citizens and the vision behind it.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So Chimong is a company that aims to, engage citizens in a very incredible way. It started out as a debating company where we would inculcate a form of leadership, critical thinking and critical competencies amongst young people through debating, and and now we're more in the education space where we are teaching these critical competencies to young people as co-curricular work that benefits them in the classroom environment as well. So we just transitioned nicely from traditional debating environment to the more critical thinking and educational space that we exist in currently, because essentially we believe in the future that young people are to inherit, and what you have to do is capacitate young people to take hold of the future that they're going to take charge of.
And you're placing the emphasis on Ulusha, and we as a Youth Current Affairs show as well, we're keen on finding out, Uguti, what does leadership mean to you?
Well, leadership, for me, it starts from within. It starts from within. It starts from self-leadership. It starts from, the ability to identify a specific problem that you might be facing in your own life, and the nerve and discipline and courage to see through a solution. And then from there, to exemplify that characteristic to other people in your community and lead them through problems that they themselves might be facing. It's really taking on not only your own burdens, but also the burdens of the people that surround you in your own community. That's what leadership is about. And, that's why we look up to Abu Nelson Mandela, all the struggle activists that have taken us through the apartheid regime and taken us into freedom, because what was distinct about them was their very deep love and care for their own community, and placing those burdens upon them and relinquishing your privilege in order that you may see the collective good actualized. That's what leadership is about.
So, manje, sibona a new wave of Ulusha, who are keen on building legacies for themselves. Ngifuna ukwazi from you, what does it mean to build a legacy, and how do you apply Llama principles in your daily life?
Sure. I mean, that's such an important question. And I think, first of all, we thank God for freedom, because freedom allows us to be able to even think forward and think about a legacy beyond being free and beyond fighting for freedom, and we thank God for those, our predecessors, the activists that actually ensured that we are in a position where we could think about our legacy from a perspective of self-actualization. And so how I practice legacy building, I have a son, I have a family, I'm married. And so for me, it's an everyday practice on inculcating very deep principles and values within him and raising my child in a way that is very deliberate for change, that's deliberate with changing and redefining manhood in mind, and changing and redefining the fate of Black Africans in mind from an economic standpoint through entrepreneurship and all of those kinds of things. And those words of affirmation and those principles are truly what I raise my child on.
So Tammy, as we celebrate Nelson Mandela Month, I want to know from you, what lessons have you drawn from Utata Nelson Mandela?
I think the first thing we have to say is that it's very important to understand Mandela in a more holistic form. I think we have a stereotype of Mandela, him just being this kind teddy bear kind of figure in South Africa. He was three things. He's very complex. Mandela was an activist, Mandela was a governor, and Mandela was a philanthropist. And in order to embody those three passages in his life, there are different characteristics that he had to imbibe. As an activist, it was about him being a radical, someone that was unhappy with a system and was willing to relinquish his privilege in order to ensure that that system is collapsed, even by radical means, by any means necessary. The second, him being a governor, the first thing he had to do in order to become a governor is that he had to negotiate for peace, almost contradicting, the attitude that he imbibed in the previous, but using peace and negotiation as a means to acquire freedom finally. And that patience is so important in leadership and in state building and in state leadership as well. And finally, him being a philanthropist is him using the networks that he had created when he was a governor to ensure that at a systematic level, we eradicate poverty. And that's where we meet the heart of Nelson Mandela.
Okay, Tammy, we have to thank you so much for your time on Expressions today. Well, Utami Poe is the managing director from Chemong Growing Citizens there. Thank you very much for your time, Butwami. And I'm so fascinated, Namhlanje. We spoke to phenomenal young people with Jackie, and we just, got a gist and sense as to how they reshaping and redefining e-bases. I'm so excited.
Absolutely, Ngo, and I'm just want to again reiterate and say big thank you to Utami, to Liz, as well as Lucanio. And I'm hoping that young people Kahaya are inspired, despite the odds that we're facing. I hope they were able to see from today's stories that we can make a difference. And Mandela Day can actually be every single day. So we've come to the end of the show, Ngo.
Yep, end of the show indeed. Remember to keep the conversations going in Kundien Zethu Zokuxhumana. From all of us here at Expressions, we wish you a spectacular evening going forward.
Adios, muchachos. Thanks for watching.